When you did last night's homework, you should have shaded 55 boxes, not 11. 11 out of 20 is not the same as 11 out of 100. So in order to figure out what our equivalent ratio is, you create the rainbow diagram, realize that you're multiplying both top and bottom by 5, and that's going to give you your equivalent ratio, 55 over 100, and 55 boxes is what gets shaded in on your grid 10 by 10. Okay, let's move on. You should have gotten 0.55 as your decimal equivalent. Raise your hand if you got that. Okay, your goal by the end of today is to be able to take fractions and change them pretty easily into decimals and into percentages. That's going to be kind of our goal. You need to kind of do that routinely. I give you the fraction, you change it to a decimal, and then from decimal you go from decimal to percentage. So you'll have some more time to practice this today. Kev?
Isn't decimal the same thing?
Yes and no, because you'll see what we're doing something to the decimal when we change it to from a decimal to percentage or percentage to decimal. The decimal is actually going to move 2 places right or 2 places left. Okay, we're going to take that a step further today when we do fractions, irregular fractions, such as a little bit later on. We're going to do where is it? We're going to work on 1/8 today, because 1/8 there's not a number that we can multiply 8 by, an even number or a whole number that we can multiply 8 by that's going to give us 100. So I'm going to show you how to use long division when we get to that. Finishing up with the homework though. What was the next fraction? Without revealing it, I don't remember. Karen. Okay, 17/25. What do you have to multiply the top and the bottom by in order to get the equivalent ratio out of 100? Leah. It's a multiplication value of times 4. And when you do that, what do you get? Okay, so that's that. So our equivalent ratio is 68 over 100. Again, once you have a number that has a denominator of 100, our numerator becomes our percent. So it's 68%. What is that as a decimal equivalent? Lily? 0.68. Okay? Yes? I want to go over what you did yesterday too. So go to unhappy versus happy people at work. In step 1, all they wanted you to do was to create the ratio. So unhappy was 300 out of 1,000 total people. Happy was 700 out of 1,000. That's all you had to do there was just create the ratio. Then in this next step, we'll use TRF to make equivalent ratios out of 100. The template is really unhappy over total. So I'm just going to add that to the bottom part. Take that first ratio, 300 over 1,000. And it's going to be something over 100. Well, how do you figure out what it's going to be? You've got to divide it by 10. And you'll get 30 over 100, which is the equivalent to 30%. All right? Okay with that? Most of you were okay with this. When you got down to the double line diagram, it was a little confusing. Happy over total. Same plan. Something over 100. Division factor is 10. 70 over 100, which is 70%. And then I'm just going to skip down to the bottom, and since we have our percents, we can do our decimals pretty readily. 0.3 and 0.7. Double line diagram. The top is going to be percentage. And the bottom, they don't tell you this, is total number of people. Okay. Our scale for percent will always start at 0 and always go to 100. That's the whole entire strip. Since it's being broken up 10 ways, we have to count by how many with each segment.
10.
Joel. Okay, 10. That's what I'm going to do. And that works out evenly. Okay, here's where this got confusing for you. The total amount of people surveyed is how many? Just say it out loud. 1,000 total people. So that's here. Which makes sense because 100% of everybody is all 1,000 people. This also starts at 0 down here. So now we're breaking up 0 to 1,000 by 10 in 10 different pieces. So what do you have to count by in this scenario? Gavin,
100.
you're counting by 100s. Making believe that you never did TRF at all. Like if you just went from the word problem to the double line diagram, once you've set this up and they're asking for unhappy people, you go to the ratio that you created here for unhappy. There were 300 people. You're trying to figure out what percent that is. If you go down and find 300 people, that's equivalent to 30%. Which is what you got in your TRF anyway. This is just showing you a different way. Now, with happy people, it's broken up the same way. I'm not going to recreate the whole entire number strip. Okay? Because it's the same exact scale. It's 0 to 100 for percent and 0 to 1,000 for total number. I'm just going to go back. I'll do it in a different color. What color have I not used? Oh, I'll use black. And you're looking at now finding 700 on the scale. 700's here, and that's equivalent to 70%, and that's how I got this. I realize many of you, TRF, that's the way to go. They're just trying to model it and show it to you a different way. We're going to start getting away from double line diagrams and go more to TRF anyway, because I think it just works better for you. All right, let's go to this last page. Renita is correct. Yes. And when it comes to the reasoning, you just have to explain in any way that you want that the 80 boxes that she has shaded out of 100 is equal to 4/5. Any writing that explains that, because she's shaded 80 boxes out of 100, and 80 out of 100 is equivalent to 4 to 5, because technically you're dividing both top and bottom by 20. So it works. Double line diagram. 4 out of 5. 4 out of a possible 5 is 80%. Or you could put, if you wanted to, you could put 80 out of 100. Both are acceptable. They're just equivalent. This just happens to be downscaled to simplest form. 1/5. Going here, 1 out of 5 is equivalent to 20%. Question about this, 50%, how many of you put 1/2? I'd accept it because 50% is 1/2 of something. If you use this model though, here's 40, here's 60, so 50 is exactly in between. And halfway between 2 and 3 is 2.5 or 2.5. How many had 2.5 or 2.5? I'd accept both. 2.5 or 2.5, but I would also take 1/2 too. Because in general, 50% of anything is half of something, so that's fine too. This one was confusing because this is 1, the whole number 1. It's not 1/5. Many of you put down 20%. They're not asking for 1/5. The whole entire strip is equivalent to 100%. Okay? Any questions on this page? There's no test this week. There'll be a unit test closing out the entire module the week before we break for Christmas. But I am doing extra help Thursday at lunch. So anything we're doing this week, if it's problematic for you, come in during lunch and we'll go over some of this stuff. All right, the big leap is coming. I'm going to just tell you, 26 and 27 is huge. Okay, we're going to spend some time on it. It's a big leap. Okay, you got to be able to understand this completely in order for you to be able to move on to lessons 26 and 27. So like I said, I'll have extra up on Thursday if you need it. Let's talk about this. Some of you started this yesterday. When you have a fraction that doesn't go neatly into 100, 8 doesn't go neatly into 100, I'm going to show you another method for changing fractions into decimals. Because once you can create a decimal, from decimal to percentage is easy. So here's how I want you to do it. In the box, rewrite your 1/8. I want you to extend the line out. That's going to be the roof of our house. And then make the little gazinta. You want to know why I call it a gazinta? My 6th grade teacher actually showed me this. Never forgot it. I'll explain here in a minute. The top part of the fraction goes inside the house. Put them in. In this case, it's 1. Okay, you ready? You want to know why it's called a gazinta? 8 goes into 1, how many times? 8 goes into gazinta, gazinta. 8 goes into 1. My 6th grade teacher showed me that. It's stuck. Anyway, 8 goes into 1 how many times? 0. Put your 0 up in the roof. We are not done. We now know, which makes sense because 1/8 is a value less than 1. So we're going to get a decimal that's less than 1. Make a decimal, add a 0. 8 goes into 10 how many times?
Once.
Goes once. What is 8 times 1?
8 times 1 is 8.
We have a remainder of 2. We are not done. When it comes to decimal world, you've got to go to termination or repeating decimal. What do I have to do? I got to drop another 0, add a 0, drop a 0. This is about 8 into 20. What is 8 times 2? Am I done? I am not. Nick, what do I got to do? Add a 0, drop a 0. 8 into 40. Nick, that's you. What is 8 times 5? Guess what? We terminated. No remainder and no other numbers to bring down other than zeros. 0.125 is our decimal equivalent. And the rule is, in order to change a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal twice to the right. And you get 12.5%. That's going to be our rule only because it's a shortcut, and I'm just telling you that's the way we're going to do it. Let's practice that for a minute. We'll start off easy and then we'll get harder. If I gave you the decimal 0.38, what is that as a percentage? And Jen,
38%.
come up and get a ticket. Yes. Just rip off. Ready? Gonna get a little harder. 0.09. Karen. 9 what? Come get a ticket. Yep. Gonna get harder. Ready? 1.37. Anna. 137 what? Got it. Good. Ready? 0.01596 as a percent. Caitlin.
15,936%.
Ooh, no. We moved the decimal way too much. Leah.
1.596.
Move the decimal twice. Drop the rock, I say. Move it and drop the rock. 1.5936%. Come up and get a ticket. We can do it the other way too. I'm going to give you the percent. You tell me the decimal. %12.9%. Ev, all you.
0.1.
Come get a ticket. Yes. %1. Be careful. D. Right. If you move the decimal twice, I call this an empty nest. You got to put an egg in the empty nest. 0.01. Come get. 5%. Mac.
0.05.
Move it once, move it twice, drop the rock, put an egg in the empty nest. 0.05. Come get. Got one more for you. 0.17%. Lily.
Wait, what was it?
0.17%. What's the decimal equivalent?
0.00.
Yes. Move it twice. Drop the rock. Add 2 eggs into the empty nests. 0.0017. Come up and get a ticket. Okay, here are the answers for page 7 in the booklet. 5/8 has to be done by long division. When you set it up, 8's outside the house, 5.00 will go in. And when you go through the long division process, you get 0.625 as a decimal. And then to get the percent, we move the decimal twice to the left, to the right. And you wind up with 62.5%. Moving down to the chart. 3/8, we have to use long division for that. That's the only fraction there that we have to do long division. And if you do everything correctly, it's 0.375 as a decimal. To change any decimal to a percent, we move the decimal twice to the right, drop the rock, as I like to say, and that's 37.5%. for 35 or 0.35, move the decimal twice to the right, drop the rock. 35%. And then to determine the fraction, remember that percent means per 100. So you're going to take any given percent, and our first goal is to create a fraction out of 100. And that's 35 out of 100. And then if we can reduce it, we should. Since they're both divisible by 5, numerator and denominator, you get 7/20. And that one is done. From percent to decimal, we're going to move the decimal in the opposite direction. Drop the rock and you get 0.845. And when you create the fraction for this, I have not taught this with 3 digits, but this goes to the thousandths place. So when we actually say this number or this value in word form, it's 845 thousandths. So that is going to create a fraction of 845 over 1,000. And if you leave it like this, that's fine. They are both divisible, 845 and 1,000 divisible by 5. And if you do it and you wanted to reduce it, as crazy as this becomes, it's really 169 over 200 in simpler form. But again, I would take 845 over 1,000. For 0.325, we're going to move the decimal twice to the right, drop the rock, you get 32.5%. And then following the same procedure as you did for 84.5, it becomes 325 over 1,000. Both numerator and denominator are divisible by 25. If you wanted to reduce it, it would simplify as 13 over 40. And that's in simplest form. However, once again, 325 over 1,000 would be perfectly acceptable. 2/25, 25 is divisible, or is a multiple of 100. So we can use rainbow method or TRF. Times 4. And that's going to give you 8 out of 100. You just have to be careful when you create your decimal. It is not 0.8. That's 80%. Our correct decimal is 0.8 or 8%. And that takes care of the chart. For this bottom part, the answers are going to vary. For exercise 6, I'm not going to cover that here. And that's going to be it and conclude everything for lesson number 25.